Hey there guys, welcome back for another Mortal Realms painting video. This week I'm painting Lady Olynder from issue 72 of the Mortal Realms magazine. So you can see here I've gone and primed her in white, and I've left off the two spirits that are either side of her, just to make painting her easier and obviously painting them as well, and then I can super glue them on once the model is finished. But right now all I'm doing is taking some Nighthaunt Gloom straight out of the pot. I'm not worried about thinning or anything at this point, and I'm very quickly applying this to the bottom of each of the tendrils from her cloak and her veil. What I then do is very quickly, whilst this paint is still wet, it is important to try and do it whilst this is wet, I rinse the brush into a side pot of water and fade the paint up a little bit. So basically I water down what's on the brush or what's already on the model, and just try and get a little bit smoother transition into that white at the top by using a slightly thinned down paint without having to go through the process of using thin down and multi-layering and stuff like that. So as long as you work quick with keeping the paint wet, you can rinse the brush. Doesn't have to rinse perfectly, just get most of the paint off, and then blend it up as you can see here, just to get a little bit of a softer transition, ready for the next step. Doesn't have to be 100%, but it does help make the next step a little bit easier. So I'll get on with this and we'll be back in just a bit. Okay, so with the Nighthaunt Gloom now on the areas that I want, I'm now taking some Corax White and a dry brush and just dry brushing over the gloom. Now what this is going to do is obviously blend the white of the primer down into the Nighthaunt Gloom and get rid of any harsh lines. We shouldn't have too many anyway because of the watered down step that we did at the end of the last stage. But all we're looking to do is, like I say, just blend nicely over the harsher lines, try and get that fade off into that Nighthaunt Gloom tip. You can go over the Nighthaunt Gloom just to fade it a little bit, but this will also pick off the edges, the sharper, harsher edges on the model, and highlight those as well. So go over everything, just not too much on the Nighthaunt Gloom, just enough to pick off some of those edges, but the rest of the body, you can do whatever to get that smooth blend. Okay, so now to add some shadow and depth into the white. We don't want it just pure white. What I'm doing now is using a mix of Coelia Green Shade with Lamian Medium and some water. That's 5 parts Coelia Green Shade and Lamian Medium, and 3 parts water. So that's 5, and 3. And what this is going to do is give a very watered down, diluted Coelia Green Shade. We don't want it to pool too much, though it doesn't matter too much if it does, but we don't want it heavy pooling. What we're looking to do is more stain the white and a little bit of pooling in some of those darker recesses. Like I say, the idea here is to give a ghostly green tint to the white areas, as opposed to having them just white. And what this will also do is it will not take to the sort of the raised peaks too well, and that gives us an automatic highlight with those peaks. What we're looking to do is just get it down into the recesses. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit off camera there and it's behind the palette cam, but I'll skip forward a little bit, let you have a look at what I'm aiming for, and then we'll get on to the next step. Okay, so next up, to make her hair stand out just a little bit from the rest of her, I'm giving it a little bit more of a green tint, using a 50-50 mix of Athonian Camo Shade and Lamian Medium. And like I say, this is just to give it a bit more of a greenish tint, as opposed to the bluer tint that the veil and her body has, just to obviously split the letters up a little bit. And as I said, same as the previous step, I'm just looking to stain this with minimal pooling. Too much pooling and it goes to quite a dark green. We're not looking for that, just a nice green tint. So then obviously I'll let all this dry and we'll come back for the next step. Okay, so with the ghostly parts done, you can see now I've moved back to the dry brush, back to the Corax White, and I'm now giving this a very light dry brush down the entire model, just picking out the raised edges and sort of softening up that blend a little bit. Be careful not to hit the staff too hard there, you don't want to break that. But yeah, I'm just looking to basically blend this down and get that nice soft fade with that green tint just under the white there with white highlights. Her hood, I go a little bit heavier. Obviously it's nicer to have a little bit more white at the top and then come down to that, you know, get darker as it comes down the model. There's pretty much no paint on this brush, so as I'm doing this downward stroking, you know, all I'm doing is just sort of feather dusting over the top of the green tint, and all that's doing is just blending it down nicely. Alright, so now that the ghostly parts are all done and finished, I can now go in with Abaddon Black and paint anything that is going to be metallic. There isn't any black areas on here, so pretty much everything, her headdress and her staff or wand, whatever you want to call it, can be done in black, and then the vine that goes sort of around and through her we'll do in a later step. But for now we're just working on the sort of the golds and the metallics, and that always goes well with a dark undercoat. Okay, so moving on to the golds, now that the Abaddon Black is done, I'm using some Balthazar Gold here as a sort of a darker mid-tone base, and you can see that I've done the green vines. I did them before this step but decided that in order to make it a little bit easier for you guys, it's better to work in stages, and so we'll get all the golds done and then I'll show you the vine stage. So yeah, Balthazar Gold, make sure to get all over this. Now the problem with the headdress piece or the headpiece here is it's got all those little holes in it, so you do have to make sure to get the brush in there. I wouldn't recommend dragging the brush across too fast or harsh, as this will cause a bit of a splatter, and obviously you don't want to splatter any black or gold onto the white that we've already done, as it will be a little bit difficult to remove. So go nice and easy, take your time with it, and yeah, get that gold on. Okay, so moving on, I'm now using some Retributor armor to get a brighter gold highlight. Now what I'm doing is edge highlighting the inner curve. It's hard to explain, but it basically, my light source is coming from the top left, and so I'm trying to edge highlight the edges of each of those little swirls and stuff on the headpiece. But on the right hand side of it, it's angled or turned a little bit more towards the light source, so I paint the face of it, And essentially what I'm trying to do is go from edge highlighting to face highlighting as it curves around from her left side to the right side. And then with the staff, same thing, keeping the side that faces her body the Balthazar gold, and using the Retributor armor I paint the other side, and then fade it a little bit into the the other side to get, like I say, two transitions of gold, or two faces of gold, just to get a bit more of a realistic gold look. And then for the stone in the middle of her staff, I'm just going for a red sort of diamondy ruby, just a red stone of some kind. So all I'm doing is just using some Evil Sun's Scarlet and just giving it a nice flat coat. I'll then mix this in with the white, or with a little bit of white, and go down the edges that make up the the shape of the diamond, and then with some pure white over the top of that, I'll just add in a couple of point highlights. Okay, so with the black done, I'm now moving on to the vines for the roses that go around and through her body. A little bit difficult to reach some of the ones that are inside of her. Unfortunately, there was no way you can assemble this as a sub-assembly and then get those vines in once painted. You do have to assemble her with the vines and just try the best you can to get that colour in there. And the colour I am using here as a base is Lauren Forest. I didn't want anything bright and vibrant. I wanted something that gives a little bit more towards a dark and gloomy green, and I feel that Lauren Forest works pretty well for that. Okay, so following on from that, I'm now taking some Nurgling green and obviously thinned down slightly, and I'm using this to highlight just certain almost random areas of the vines. On the ones that are inside her, it's obviously the front face of them. Obviously, because it's thinned down, it's not going to make a bright highlight. We want some of that Lauren Forest showing through and creating a little bit of depth with it. And then on the outer ones, again, it's sort of the front facing and anything that's sort of the top side of the vines. But yeah, just working along the vines, just picking where I think the light would hit the most, and add in a layer or two of the Nurgling green. And then for the roses going along the vines, I just use some Mephiston red and get this with a nice even coat on each of the roses. I'll then mix in a little bit of white to that Mephiston red, and with a little bit of a dry brush, still using this same brush but with not too much of the pinker red paint on the bristles, I'll gently pull the brush across the roses, and what this does is picks off the top edges of each of the petals, and then I'll finish that with a wash of Carberg Crimson, and then yeah, that's the roses, nice and simple. Just go over them all with the Mephiston red, then the lightened down slightly more pinkish red, and then Carberg Crimson wash. Okay, so with the lady herself all painted up, it's time to move on to the two spirits. I can't remember what they're called, but the ghosts either side of her. I'm only going to show the one here, but the other one is done obviously in exactly the same way. It's just holding the little treasure box instead of the hourglass here. So first of all I'm doing is giving the hair a coat of Abaddon Black, and I'm getting this down to pretty much all but the last sort of centimetre or so of the end of the hair, so just leaving the last fifth portion of the hair white, so that we can get a bit of a fade off into that in the next step. So yeah, catch you guys back in a bit. Okay, so once that Abaddon Black has had time to dry, I'm now taking a small dry brush and some Fenrisian Grey, and basically I'm covering the tips with the Fenrisian Grey, and then I'll remove the excess just by rubbing it around on my paper backing that I've got there that the palette's on. Remove the excess, and then I'll dry brush that, working my way up the hair, about 2/3 of the way up. So essentially you've got the heavier or the more pigmented tips in the Fenrisian Grey, and then that becomes a softer highlight as it works its way up the Abaddon Black, and you just end up with this sort of grey, grey highlights. Okay, so with the hair done, I'm now using the Nighthaunt Gloom and the exact same method that I did for Lady Olynder herself, and that's just going over the tips with the Nighthaunt Gloom here, and then before it has time to dry, just rinse off the brush slightly, and then just wet fade that up into the white. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, as in the next step we'll be going over to the Corax White. Right, so going back to the Coelia Green Shade and Lumion Medium mix, you can see here I'm just running it down into the recesses and sort of staining all of the white, and then I'll leave that a little bit heavier towards that fade in the Nighthaunt Gloom, and then obviously let this set. Now obviously I don't want too much heavy pooling, but just enough to sort of stain all the surfaces, and then just leave a little bit of shadowing in some of the deeper recesses. Right, and once that wash has had time to dry, I'm now using some Corax White and a dry brush, and obviously being careful not to get this on the black. I'm just blending this down, dry brushing to pick off the white highlights and whiten up some of the areas where the green shade may have gone a little bit too heavy, and obviously blending this all the way down into the Nighthaunt Gloom. Right, and finally, to finish off the hourglass here, I'm just taking some Balthazar Gold and applying this over the model. Now you can see there's a bit of stain in there. That's because I didn't mix the paint enough in the bottle, and it didn't quite apply. That was more medium there, which is what had that bit of a weird stain to it. So I had to wipe that off, let it dry obviously, shake the bottle up proper, and then go back in with the gold. You can see it's applying much better now. So what I then do after this has dried, I'll then go in with some Retributor Armour and just do a little bit of edge highlighting with that. I wanted this to be a little bit more of a darker gold, so it is just literally some edge highlighting with the Retributor Armour. And then for the glass itself, I just gave that a simple wash of Drakenhof Nightshade, and yeah, that gives just a nice blue tint to the glass, with a couple of dots of white highlight on the glass and on the edge of the broken, sort of the cracked area, and that is her done. So I'll just finish up here and catch you guys back in just a sec. Yeah, and there she is, guys, the finished Lady Olynder. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit that like button down below. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button, ding that bell, and you'll get notifications of when new videos go live. And at the time you're seeing this, we should be a couple of episodes into the Warhammer Imperium series. So if you're into 40k, go and check that out too. And if you have recently subscribed, then a big warm welcome to you. Welcome to the inner circle. Thank you for your support. And until next time, guys, take it easy and keep painting those minis.